The race to get better is always ongoing at Ohio State. The race to win the Big Ten starts Saturday at Washington. Welcome to a Monday on the Beat. This is the Austin and Berm Show. I am Austin Ward. That is Jeremy Birmingham. And Buckeyes, of course, were off week number 1 on Saturday. And the schedule still looks a little different coming out of that, as a lot of Big Ten action was going on as things start ramping up here in the middle of September. And I think it's putting a different spin on maybe what Ohio State is facing, not just Saturday against the Huskies, but for this next 4-week stretch, Berm.
Yeah, this weekend was illuminating, watching different teams around the league. I mean, there were not what I would call a lot of marquee games, but there were good matchups. There were games that I think were going to be instructive in figuring out who is who for the rest of the season, what teams' strengths are, what teams' weaknesses are, who's a fraud, who's not. And I'm not sure if Indiana and Illinois is a game that's going to illuminate everything for the whole season, but it certainly changed the way people are going to talk about the league, with the top 10 ranked Illini getting absolutely just embarrassed in Bloomington. It does change things a little bit. And then you obviously have Washington, who at least offensively seems to be a pretty difficult team to stop right now. So it's a good weekend for Ohio State to sit back and watch, because I think it does allow you to see some things that you needed to see. And now we'll see how the Buckeyes adjust.
Now, this is not the first time, definitely won't be the last time. Also, maybe not all that unusual. I was clearly wrong about Illinois. They've got a chance to still bounce back from that. A lot of season ahead of them. I still respect and like Brett Bielema as a coach. When Ohio State goes there, weird things can happen in that wind tunnel in Champaign. They're still going to play physical football at that point, but they weren't anywhere near the takeaway machine, airtight defense that I thought that they were going to be, and they certainly didn't match the explosiveness. So I was wrong about them, although I still think that poses a unique challenge in a couple of weeks for Ohio State. But now I'm sitting here, I guess, for him as a prisoner of the moment. And a week ago, I was looking at the Washington matchup, and I wasn't, I don't know, you put it right there somewhere in maybe the middle of Ohio State's schedule in terms of degree of difficulty, but you're picking and choosing the things that would make it a challenge. Julian Sayin going on the road for the first time. Can this Ohio State defensive front control Damon Williams? Will they be disciplined with the pass rush lanes? And then that was pretty much it. A bunch of new guys traveling across country, dealing with the jet lag and the body clocks, and it's 2 hours longer than a flight to Nebraska. But you looked at what they had accomplished on the field, and it's like, I don't know that it certainly doesn't compare to Texas. You're not going to put it in the same category as Penn State or Michigan, of course. But I didn't even think that I would put that ahead of Illinois or maybe even Wisconsin. But both of those programs are – Illinois is licking its wounds from one game, and Wisconsin appears to be a complete disaster. So now suddenly I think Washington gets an elevated place for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they should be overlooked. They certainly have a better combination of offensive weapons than Illinois does, or certainly than Wisconsin does. At this point, the way that Damon Williams Jr. is playing, the way that they're able to use the running game and the passing game, not a lot of teams are adept at doing both. But when you have guys like Damon Williams, who Ohio State defensive coordinator Matt Patricia was saying is like Kyler Murray, and Ryan Day echoed that sentiment on his radio show on Thursday. Like this is a team that has caught the Buckeyes' attention. I was told over the weekend that Matt Patricia was not going to be on the road recruiting on Friday because he wanted to be in the building grinding tape on Washington's offense to make sure that the Buckeyes were a step ahead of that matchup. And then you get to see them on Saturday night in the Apple Cup. Obviously, Washington State is not a very good team right now, and so I think that has to be taken into some account. But I think Washington scored on 20 straight possessions or something like that, and they've done it whatever way they wanted, running the ball traditionally, throwing the ball, or using the quarterback's legs to get him out of the pocket and get creative. So the matchup itself seems more difficult just from a personnel standpoint, but then, of course, you add in the travel, you add in the first road game, the atmosphere there, it's one of the best in the country, and it takes on a little bit of different meaning for sure. But nobody should have been worried about Wisconsin. I mean, that team, that's bad. And we had talked about it in the summer or spring. Is that the way that the schedule is set up for Wisconsin, that you looked at maybe a 4 or 5 win season, and then you go get just your doors blown off at home by Maryland and a true freshman quarterback. That is not something that Luke Fickell and his defenses have ever struggled with in the past. They just look woefully out athleted on that team on the field.
Yeah, I mean, they don't look particularly well prepared either, which I never thought I would say about a Wisconsin team. But you're getting outclassed by Maryland like that in Camp Randall. That's a problem. Now, I don't cover Wisconsin, but it still looks like from the outside that, given the timing of the contract extension, the finances at still 25 million, that Luke Fickell will be around for a while longer. But that's not my place to say, and I don't know how much more of this they can stomach, because by the time Ohio State gets there, I don't know, the juice in Camp Randall could be even more lacking than it was on Saturday. But I want to go back to what you mentioned about Matt Patricia Berm, that last week in his press conference on Tuesday, he was already talking about Damon Williams. We've got this sense that the Buckeyes were not using necessarily an improvement week a week ago. They were diving in head first into Washington prep, which is not unusual when you have that many coaches on your staff. You're always going to be doing that scouting. But normally we hear so much about the self-scout and the fundamentals, and it's all about us for Ohio State and the Woody for those weeks. I didn't really get that vibe last week. I felt like maybe that's what's also in my mind. Like, they were looking at this Washington game and they're treating this one as a pretty big one.
Yeah, it does help that you had Grambling State and Ohio in the last 2 weeks to allow yourself to maybe be able to look ahead a little bit and to start focusing on this. And I think that the nice thing for Ohio State is that what you've seen with the game plan against Arch Manning, the game plan against Parker Navarro in Ohio, they do have a little bit of a sense of how to put the clamps on a quarterback that moves around the way Damon Williams does. Now, Damon Williams does that at a level that is ahead of Arch Manning or Parker Navarro, but you watch the game on Saturday night between Washington and Washington State, and you can't help but notice that there's no Arvell Reese or Sonny Styles out there for the Cougars. So that does make them a little bit less likely to put the clamps on Williams. But as I said, it's really not just him. It's also Jonah Coleman at running back, who leads the country in rushing touchdowns right now. And, of course, Denzel Boston, their best receiver. Like, it's a pretty good team, well-rounded out there, and Jed Fish and his offense is putting up a lot of points. So that does get interesting. Now, have you heard Ohio State doing anything like unusual to prepare or not? Because
No.
we know that they were working last week on like crowd noise at practice and going, no, you know what I mean, silent count and that kind of stuff already.
Yeah.
They're starting to work on that already. So like, I don't think this is one of those games where the Buckeyes, as you said, like saw the off week and figured it was a time to relax. I think that they just decided they could ramp things up and maybe just get a head start on Washington.
Yeah, no, and I know that, as would be expected, Ohio State gave the players the option to go home if they wanted to. I saw Caden McDonald on Wednesday. He was really fired up to get down there and get some home cooking with his family, his mom down there in Georgia. I think Julian Sayin flew home. So outside of that stuff, like, no, I mean, I think it was pretty standard. But if they played anybody, even when they go to Purdue, they turn up the volume and try and simulate the crowd noise and work on silent cadences, even though you know that that's probably not going to be an issue. So that, I think that was pretty much par for the course for Ohio State last week. Now they're trying to get now the non-practice part, which I think we're going to have to talk about that maybe on Talking Tuesday. Is it appears that Ohio State is going to move up its travel day to Thursday to go out to Washington. They did not do that a year ago with Oregon. They really tried to downplay, the body clock situation. Ryan Day, that's where that comment came from. It's just 2 hours further than Nebraska. We can handle all that. And I'm not retroactively saying that the Buckeyes were physically unprepared to play at Oregon a year ago. But I think once you go through that the first time, and if it becomes an annual situation in this expanded Big Ten, like, you may have to account for that differently. And it looks like Ohio State will. And that's afforded also because you're coming off of the off week. So I think that's an interesting dynamic. Is that going to be the most fascinating part of this matchup? No, I wouldn't say so. But a lot of these guys, when we talk about new starters, replacing starters, not having as much of a veteran presence on this team. The fact that their first road trip of the season against a Big Ten opponent is all the way across the country in Seattle, I don't know that that should be entirely written off. Like that, it becomes a bit of a skill to learn how to travel and take care of your body. And so I think that will be something to watch. Is it more important than just defending Damon Williams? No, probably not.
Yeah, again, I don't know how much weight to put into that. I think it's telling. Ohio State again doesn't generally do things in a by the seat of their pants nature. So if Mick Barati and the Buckeyes strength conditioning and wellness or whatever decide, hey, we should probably do this because it would have been helpful a year ago, then I think that the Buckeyes have the data to support the decision, and we'll see if that provides a little bit of extra juice. I mean, again, it's a 3:30 start in the East Coast, so it's not like it's going to be too wonky either way from a body clock standpoint. But I understand the impetus for it and the decision and the reason behind it, and I think it makes perfect sense for Ohio State to get out early if they can, just to give yourselves a chance to get acclimated to where you are, because it's just weird when you're in a different time zone. Like you wake up one day and then all of a sudden you lose 3 hours. It's a weird world.
Yeah, I know I'm not looking forward to it on the body clocks this week, but I'm also not playing in the game, so it doesn't matter. Do you think so? I named off the three things that I believe are the most notable challenges here for Ohio State with Washington. I believe last week you could see the spread around 13.5 as I checked on Sunday morning. Ohio State was favored by 10.5. But I look at it as dealing with the travel, Julian saying first road start, and then corralling Damon Williams. Is there something that I'm missing, or how would you establish a pecking order between those three things for the degree of difficulty?
No, I mean, I think that those are really the only things that matter heading into this week. If you stop Damon Williams, you stop Washington's offense. And so to me, that's got to be first. I think Ohio State will have to figure out a way to communicate. We'll see exactly how much command Julian Sayin has gained of the huddle. That's something that Ryan Day talked about in August as one of his developing strengths. So this will be the first time where he's going to have an opportunity to go out there and prove that in front of a road crowd and really keep the Ohio State huddle on task and making sure that they're where they need to be. It's going to be an interesting matchup. I think that Washington is going to very, very heavily rely on Damon Williams in the run game and trying to keep Ohio State off balance. And I don't know ultimately that it's a game that Washington has anywhere near the talent 1-85, but if they can make it uncomfortable for a quarter or two, and all of a sudden you get that crowd into the game and you put the Buckeyes on their back foot, and all of a sudden a game can go down to the wire without much thought when you're playing against a team that has some talented dudes. So ultimately it's about stopping the quarterback, and that's why Matt Patricia, Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, like they've been ahead of this and working to get ahead of it, because that's how you're going to decide this game.
It feels like we're broken records on the beat, Burn, because like we spent 8 months talking about the defensive line and the depth at defensive tackle, and is there going to be a rotation here and replacing Jack and JT and Ty, and then here we are a month into the season, and Washington's got a particular set of skills at quarterback that's going to put that under the microscope yet again. And it's, as you mentioned, Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese are also heavily involved in this. Caleb Downs, everybody, like it is in all 11 situation. I'm recognizing that fully, but we're in this spot where we also still don't have, I think, a clear-cut definitive answer on is this Rushman group going to meet that same level as a year ago. And it's early. They didn't have to answer that in the first three games necessarily. And also they played really well against Texas, which is the only one of those three games that resonates, at least in a talent equated way. But especially coming off of the uncertainty of what the Taiwan Malone and Edric Houston situation was at 3 Tech against Ohio, we're still going into another game, game number 4, and I feel like having the same conversation that we've had for 7 months.
Yeah, and again, this one isn't really about Damon Williams. That's about Jonah Coleman. And when Washington does decide to line it up and just try a traditional run game, like they have the guys to do that. They have an offensive line that's big, and they have a running back that's big and strong and can get to the second level. So that ultimately is where that game is going to be fought, and Ohio State is going to need to figure out who are the guys next to Caden Curry and Caden McDonald that are ready to step up. Are we going to see a healthy Kenyatta Jackson? We saw the big old brace on his knee for the Ohio game. Are we going to continue to see more and more of CJ Hicks as he makes plays and looks more comfortable in the run game? But this week, I think, and this is not a Talking Tuesday episode or anything like that, so we're not talking that much about what we're wondering. But there
we'll do that
needs
tomorrow.
There has to be some explanation about what is going on with Edric Houston, and is there a true just elevation of Taiwan Malone, or is there something else going on? Because even when you rewatch the game against OU, when Edric was in the game, it's something just doesn't seem where it had been. So I'm interested in that, but the Buckeyes are going to be fighting in the trenches against Washington for sure. But the biggest thing is just making sure that those rush lanes stay, remain keep the integrity of the rush lanes and let Ohio State use the athleticism of Rival Reese and Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs to impact the Washington run game. Because if it comes down to just 4 guys up front versus 5 guys up front, you generally lose that.
Yeah, I definitely want to save some things. Adam the King is out of the country. He won't be on Talking Tuesday, so Berm and I will be rolling along all week, and Berm will be sliding into that slot after we're done with Roosters and the live show brought to you by Tansky Power Sports on Monday. But I just, as you're talking about the situation with Taiwan Malone, and I brought it up, and Edric Houston, I feel like I have just completely put out of mind that he got hurt on the first day of training camp. It's like, well, he's going to be fine. He said he's full go. He got back to full action in the middle of training camp, but we didn't see all of those practices. I wonder if there's any part of what happened to him physically that is still lingering into the start of the season. We haven't even, like, you and I talked about it, I think, on Wednesday, where it's like, what are the odds that Taiwan Malone starts again against Washington? I thought it was very low, but that in my mind is also, if we're projecting out a full speed Edric Houston, and maybe we haven't even seen that yet, and we've just, again, dismissed entirely the fact that he missed a period of training camp because he got hurt on the first day of it.
Yeah, maybe. But that's the disservice. If that's the case, then there's a disservice being done without his name showing up on the injury reports or anything like that. So we'll see. The Buckeyes need a healthy and 100% and to his potential Edric Houston to get the most out of this defense. And that is going to start this week, because Washington and their offense is not something that you can just toy with. They will be able to exploit you in some ways.
They're also not Penn State or Michigan, but is there
or
anyone
Indiana.
else on? Well, Indiana's not on Ohio State's schedule.
Thank you, Big Ten schedulers.
Well, that is a unique twist. I feel like the top half of the Big Ten is getting better, and and other programs are rising up right now. Maryland going on the road and beating Wisconsin. I would not have envisioned that. They're off to a great start. USC is off to a really good start. They're the only 2-0 team in the league. You look at some of the power in the Big Ten right now, it's getting better, and yet Ohio State's current strength of schedule seems to be getting worse because Illinois loses, Wisconsin is a mess. They don't play Indiana this year. Rutgers gives up 38 points somehow to Iowa, which should be illegal. Greg Schiano should be fired for that. I shouldn't say that so willy-nilly, but that was just unthinkable for me to even see. But you look at the way that I was putting all these pieces together, the other results, and watching the teams that are on Ohio State's schedule, it's like, this is not shaping up to make this a more impressive resume. And maybe by default, I'm elevating Washington. I don't know. It's not. Beating Colorado State and Washington State is not the most powerful statement you can possibly make about the strength of your roster, but it kept coming around to how strange this schedule is, because now you're looking at this segment and Washington's at the front of it, and maybe the rest, those next 3 games, Minnesota struggling, Illinois getting embarrassed, Wisconsin being a disaster, and then the teams in November, UCLA being a dumpster fire. It's like, suddenly the schedule that I thought was going to be more challenging than Ohio State was getting credit for now looks pretty lame.
Yeah, but it's also September, and we don't know who everyone is. The teams are continuing to evolve and to change. I am confident Illinois will play a better game against Ohio State than they did against Indiana on Saturday night, which was just an absolute uh, like bloodbath. That was unbelievable watching that game. Um, I think Illinois had like less than 175 yards and gave up almost 600 to Indiana. It was just a that was an obliteration. That's an anomaly in the Brett Bielema era of Illinois football for sure. I think the interesting thing here is that Ohio State is just going to have to view all of these teams for what they are. And it's like, hey, you still have to go on the road. You have to travel out to Illinois, as you mentioned. Weird things happen there. It's a good team. Maybe not a top 10 team like people have been discussing them as, but it's a good enough team to surprise you. And Luke Altmaier at quarterback can get some things done if he gets time to throw the ball. And we'll see. Indiana did not give him much of that on Saturday. Michigan obviously is who they are, that they are going to be a better team by the end of November than they are now. And they're finding ways to win, even though offensively they're still a little bit anemic and don't really have much of an identity throwing the ball. But if you can run the ball twice for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns, you're going to win a lot of games in the Big Ten. The Buckeyes will have to figure out who they are by that time as well. So everyone is trying to figure out, like, what's your identity? Who are you? Ohio State played Ohio in Grambling, right? So it's not like we've seen the Buckeyes really at their best yet this season either. So they're certainly better than Clemson, but I think it's still early enough in the season where a lot of these results, whether they're good or bad, are a little bit a paper tiger-ish because, as you mentioned, like, think about Washington beating Colorado State and Washington State. Those are terrible teams. They're awful. And they're going to feel pretty confident, though, heading into this game against Ohio State. And we'll see. We've seen in the past, confidence can go a long way for a program to keep you elevating. But sometimes you run into a team that just punches you in the mouth. And we'll see if Washington can handle that this week, because I wouldn't expect that they will, even though this game now certainly takes on a much more interesting profile based on how they've played so far.
All I'm saying is that it's going to be an interesting week and probably a more fascinating one than I expected going into it. So kudos to Washington for building it up, and shame on the rest of the Big Ten that was letting me down on the schedule. As alluded to earlier, we will be at Roosters for the live show on Monday. We'll have the normal week with snap judgments on Tuesday and Wednesday. Ryan Day and some players, a lightning round. The full complement of game week coverage will be back. Just missed talking to everybody about football over the weekend, and I also didn't expect that Indiana was going to become Brock Lesnar and Illinois was going to be John Cena. So what a wild Saturday night in the state of Indiana.
I don't understand that reference. Does that mean that did John Cena lose in his final match against Brock Lesnar?
Brock Lesnar was Indiana and John Cena was Illinois. That's what happened in the match. Six F5s.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's more than a normal person receives. Whatever. So yeah. For those of you wondering why Austin appears to be in a holding cell, it's because he's in Deanna, because he was at WrestlePalooza on Saturday, and so he's still celebrating there. The big day.
But we'll be back, of course, in the great state of Ohio and in the heart of it all in Columbus for Monday's show. Berm will also be on Talking Tuesday. As mentioned, Adam King is out. So get ready for a full week of the actual Austin and Berm show. Looking forward to it before we head out to Washington this weekend for the Big Ten opener. Thanks so much for joining us on 97.1 The Fan, 10 TV, 10 TV Plus, and anywhere that you might be downloading podcasts. We sincerely appreciate you all, and for all the questions that we got on Freaky Friday on the mailbag. It's been a fun stretch, and it's about to get a lot more fun as Ohio State dives into conference play. He is Berm, I am Austin, and we will have a lot more to talk about later on. We'll see you there.